Hello, Sahil.
Hey, how are you?
Very excited to be here with
This is
you.
my first LinkedIn Live.
Well, that's a nice experience. There's a few technical things that always the new things are tricky, and that's the fun also. Now try new things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And do we know, will we see the chat, I guess, so we can tell if people are able to see it?
yeah. I see
Cool.
here Gabor. Hi, Daniele. Hello. Buon pomeriggio.
Great.
And thank you already for connecting. I'm super excited to do this. And I want to thank you, first of all, Sahil, for doing this, for investing this hour of your time that, as you perfectly know, we cannot buy more time. It's gone. And also to the people who is connected. We had so many interesting exchanges in anticipation for this conversation. So I'm super excited. And I also want to invite you. Hello, Cecilia. Hi, Matt. Hi, Fabian. I want to invite you in the chat. Besides saying hi, which I see a lot of people, hi Leo, ciao, Tiffany, we are here to interact and to have a conversation. This will not be a scripted interview, question one, question two. It's so much more fun if we engage with you, if you ask questions. And as you always say, Sahil, to be interesting, be interested. So
Yes.
please ask interesting questions. We have no script. So let's go, and thank you again for your time. And I
Thank
want to
you.
make a very quick introduction because one of my friends who I contacted to invite her to this live, she told me, which was Sandra, she told me, "Oh, I'd love to because Sahil looks like such a good person, and I'm fascinated by a good person." Yeah, and I love this definition, and I definitely think that it is what you share and what you express. And my first question for you, Sahil, will be one of the questions that actually I know you suggest to the people. And for me would be if you had one billboard to see for all the world, what would you put on that billboard?
I like you're using my own question against me.
Yeah.
This is very good. It's a good starting point. I think it's kind of a funny question for me to answer because I actually did this. I did have a billboard in
Wow.
Times Square when my book came out, and
Wow.
and we did quite literally put on the billboard, "Reject the default, live by design."
Wow.
And that message, and the reason we chose it, and the reason it was such a core mantra of the book, is because that is at the core of everything that I believe people should be doing more of. It is to reject the default and to live by your own design. I think that has become increasingly rare. It feels like one of those obvious things, like, oh yeah, I'm going to reject the default.
Yeah.
Very difficult to do in a world that pats you on the back for accepting the defaults and for marching down the path that you've been told is the right one, for playing the games that you've been told are the right ones. We celebrate the people that do that in a lot of cases. And the whole book, the whole call to action around it is to take the time to question those things. There's this story that I love of a minister who goes to the king and says to the king, "If I were to tell you that there was a tiger in the market, what would you say?" And the king says, "I would say you were crazy." And then the man says, "Well, what if I told you two people were saying there was a tiger in the market?" The king says, "Well, then I would start to question it." And then the minister says, "What if I told you there were three people who told you there was a tiger in the market?" And the king says, "Well, then I would believe you that there's a tiger in the market." And the minister replies and says, "There's no tiger in the market, but you see, if enough people tell you something crazy, you'll start to believe it." That story is very representative of how a lot of us have been forced to live. We have been told certain truths over and over and over again by the world, by culture, by society, by school, by social media, and by ourselves over and over again enough times that it's called the illusory truth effect. If something is repeated enough times, we start to believe it as truth, whether or not it is actually grounded in fact, whether it has any merit. And my entire call to action is to say, you just need to pause and ask the question of whether those things actually are true. Sometimes, when three people tell you that there's a tiger in the market, it is because there is a tiger in the market. But sometimes it's a complete lie, it's made up. And unless you take the second to pause and ask the question, you'll never know which of the two it is. You'll never know if there really is a tiger in the market, you should stay out of there, or if it's just that that is something that has been repeated over and over and it's not true. The emperor has no clothes.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want people to do. I want them to start questioning some of those defaults and at least taking the time to do that. And it doesn't take that much time. It's not like I'm saying, oh, you need to remap your entire life. If you give yourself an hour, a month to just sit down and think about some of the bigger picture questions of your life, you'll be amazed by the impact that that can have on your trajectory and the things that you're doing.
Mm. I love what you say, and especially I see a connection because on your website, in the bio, they say, I'm sorry, I don't have the answers. and and that's very connected to this because you don't have the answer of how do I reject the default. So what I hear from you is you have to ask your own question. It doesn't have to be the bravest question, oh, I have to leave everything. No, maybe you're suggesting just start little by little, take your time, some time with you, pause. And and this connects me to one practice that I read from you, which is journaling. Can you tell me a little bit more about how this works?
Yeah, I don't have like a massive ambitious journaling practice. One of the things that I found in general on the internet over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years that I've been doing this is that it's very easy to get sucked into these
Yeah.
routines. Again, it's like questioning the defaults, right? Uh, if you're on like Twitter or LinkedIn, you get these elaborate routines that get a whole lot of likes. And look, frankly, like I love routines in certain cases.
Yeah.
I do a cold plunge in the morning. Like I do like routines, but one thing that I've found is that there is sort of a paradox of routines in that sometimes the routine that is meant to serve you starts to own you.
Mm.
And journaling was one of those areas for me where I sort of built up what journaling was to this elaborate level in my mind where
Yeah.
if I wasn't doing it on this extreme level, then I was kind of failing as a journaler. I wasn't going to get the extraordinary benefits from it, etc. And yet again, questioning that and asking, like, well, what am I actually seeking to do? What is the value of journaling in my life? And for me, it's just getting a few things off my brain, just articulating a few things, forcing me to think a little bit more deeply about something, whatever it might be. And so my actual journaling practice now on a daily basis is just this. I call it the 1-1-1
Mm.
method. I like at the end of the day, right before going to bed, I'll write down one win from the day. That's something that went well. One point of stress, tension, or anxiety. That's something that's kind of like nagging at me that I want to get off my brain onto the paper. And then one point of gratitude, something that I was grateful for during the course of the day. I do that. It takes, I don't know, on an average day, probably 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And I get an enormous amount of value from it. I mean, it is one of those asymmetric things, like a tiny investment of time
Yeah.
that has enormous positive impact on my life, on my well being, on my ability to fall asleep at night. I'm one of those people that used to like stare at the ceiling, mind racing, stressed about things, whatever it might be, really had a tough time going to sleep. And this has helped a lot.
Yeah. And what I hear from you is that even these tiny things, 2 or 3 minutes, has a tremendous impact on how you do. And also reminds me of what you said about that anything above zero compounds, even
Yeah.
2 minutes of journaling.
Yeah, I'm seeing some questions
Wow. Yeah, of
in the
course.
chat just about like kind of how you actually like reject default
Oh, yeah,
things.
Sandra.
Um,
Yeah.
what I would just say, one of the things that you need to do is pause to ask yourself the question of what are some of these default things that you believe about your life or about the path that you're on, and ask whether or not like what if they were not true. What would it look like? What would the world look like if that were not true? So one of mine was, I really fundamentally believed that the only way to live a happy successful life was to get on like a track, and a track that ideally was going to be one that made me a lot of money, and just stay on that track and keep my head down and do it as long as possible. And so for me, that was like I basically believed that the only ways to make money were like uh, investment banking, hedge fund, private equity, consulting, like one of these kind of like standard tracks
Yeah.
that people go on to, these like high prestige, high status tracks. I basically
Oh,
thought that that was the way that you make money. You get on that, go to a good school, you get on that track, you take the job, you stay in the job for 30 years, make money, leave happy. And only once I questioned whether or not that was actually true, whether there were actually different paths, whether there was a different path that was better for me, did I see those paths. And so that's kind of an interesting thing, which is you cannot plan the perfect journey. You can't sit where you are and say like, well, I'm on here on this path A, and look at this perfect path B over here. Let me just go take path B. What actually happens is you question whether path A is the right one. You ask that question. You realize, oh, maybe it's not. You take a sort of leap of faith, which
mm,
is, I'm going to step off this clean path in front of me and go into the underbrush over here, which is like a little yucky looking. You go over there, and then suddenly it opens up, and you just look and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I had never realized that
yeah,
this existed over here. But you didn't know that it existed because you had path blindness. You were so focused on your one path, you hadn't even thought to ask whether there were alternative ones. I mean, when I was leaving my old job, my first assumption was that I was going to go take basically the same type of job, but closer to family. And I went and applied to a bunch of those, and I got rejected. I mean, and I had like a good track record.
yeah,
I had, a great degree from a great school. I had great network. All these things were going for me, and I was getting rejected from these jobs on this normal path. And it was only then that my wife said, can't you just do this thing that you've been doing on the weekends, which was this writing? Can't you just do that? Isn't that like a thing that people can do? And that was when I started walking down this new path. It sort of gave me the courage to do it. And now we look back on it and laugh because I think to myself, oh my God, what if one of those places had accepted me and I had gone and taken that job? I mean, it would have been miserable. I would have been, again, like chewing glass, marching down a path that isn't yours. All of these things that have happened were sort of a result of this, like, lucky ish encounter of like not getting the job, because it forced me to realize that there were other paths and that you could walk down something different.
yeah. That's great. Let's check the chat because I see also a lot of questions. So we'll see. Uh, mm, yeah, Paul is asking a related question to where did you find the courage? What's the defining moment for you? So yeah, how perhaps what I hear also is how to take this leap of faith when it's the moment. How do you
Yeah,
feel that?
leaps of faith. I've written about this before. I mean, leaps of faith are. Um, I deconstruct every problem I come into. You'll probably notice this as a common thread about me. I'm like I guess, highly analytical person. And so my tendency is to take a problem and say, like, well, what is this? What is the problem in reality? Like, what is it about a leap of faith that makes it feel so leapy?
Yeah,
And, when we talk about a leap of faith, we basically are saying it's very scary. What is so scary about it? Well, there's basically two things. It's an information asymmetry, and then there's an evidence asymmetry, meaning I have tons of information and evidence about my current life. I know exactly what it looks like, and evidence means I know that I can live my life here. I know that I can take care of my people, pay my bills, responsibilities, etc. I have none of that for whatever the future life is, the other side. And so when you say that like the fear equals that asymmetry, the problem to be solved is that asymmetry. We need to gather information and create evidence that makes that fear come down so that we can then have the courage. Like we're able to reduce that fear that increases our ability to show courage by stepping over it.
yeah,
Um, that was really what I did without realizing it. And it was, I was writing every single day, sharing things. I was starting to see other people who were doing these other things because I was exposing myself to that world. So I was meeting with authors, I was spending time with writers, creators that were doing courses, doing other businesses. I was spending time immersed in that world. So I was seeing it. So the information was going up. And simultaneously, I was building this platform. So I was getting evidence. People were coming to me wanting to pay me money for things. Like there was all this evidence being generated of my ability to make money and meet my responsibilities. So suddenly, that fear was like, without knowing it, the fear was kind of coming down. So then when my wife made that comment, can't you just do this other thing? Rather than it being like, oh my God, no, I
yeah,
can't. That's this enormous leap. It felt like that might be a risk, but like yeah, what's the worst that could happen? It's a 2-year MBA and I end up going back. I like do 2-year live real life MBA and then I go back and get
I
another
love that.
job. And that really just as a framework for thinking about those big changes helps a lot. It's like just deconstruct the problem to something that you can actually solve through tiny actions, through gathering information, through creating evidence. And as a framework for general problem solving when you encounter big life changes or big things, it's a really good way to approach it is just to say, what is the actual problem that I'm dealing with? The other thing I'll say is that the reality with these sort of paths that you're on in life, everyone will tell you that the worst thing in the world is to be on a bad path.
Mm.
I completely disagree. I think the worst thing in the world is to be on a good path that isn't yours. The reason I say that is because the bad path screams at you every single day to get off of it. You like everything within your body, within your world is telling you that you have to get off this path because it's bad for you, because it's destroying you in some way. The good path that isn't yours is much more deceptive because there's so many forces telling you to stay on it, telling you that it's good, that you can pay your bills, that it's like, oh, it's fine. This is what life is. You start doing the mental gymnastics that, like, oh, you're not supposed to like the things you do. It's fine. You need to, your responsibilities, all of these things. So what happens is it makes that leap feel way more intimidating. And most people will never do it. I mean, 90+% of people, I would guess 99% of people who are on a good path that doesn't feel like theirs will never go through enough of the motion and action to gather evidence, create, and gather information, create evidence to actually go and make that step off of it. And so that is really a lot of what I talk about and write about is um, how to go about doing that, how to go about taking all these actions, creating that evidence so that you can then make the decision. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to make the decision to step off and go down the new path, but it at least means that you'll be armed with enough information and enough evidence to make a good decision.
Yeah, I love what you say, and perhaps one thing that comes also to my mind when you say this, when I hear people telling me or saying, "Oh, thank goodness it's Friday." Maybe that's some alert that something is not 100% aligned. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I don't know. I go back and forth on a lot of these things because um, I think that in general, work is work. And like you can love it, but it's still nice to just get a little break every now and then. I mean, I really
yeah.
um have been in like a season of unbalance over the last few
Mhm.
months, really like 6 9 months. I really haven't gotten much of a break, and I love what I get to do. I get a ton of energy out of it, but I am gassed. I mean, I could really use like a true break. And well, I think there's a lot of realities of doing your own thing, going down your own path that get totally masked and like brushed under the rug by the whole culture of glamorizing it. I need to write a piece on this. I've been like just like writing them down and brainstorming this for a while, and I need to just write a piece on it because I do think that like LinkedIn, all of these different platforms, we celebrate as an alternative path to the traditional one. The idea of like go do your own thing, bet on yourself, all of this, and it is not for everyone. And like there's it's like anything else in life. I think there are great, amazing, incredible benefits, and there are also incredibly challenging drawbacks to it. And going in eyes wide open about what both sides of that equation are allows you to then make a more thoughtful and elegant decision when comes time to actually go and do that. But the whole like guru thing of like, oh, go just bet on yourself, do your own thing, quit your 9 to 5.
Mm,
Maybe, right? Like, I think for some people, yes, go do that. But in general, I think most people like the illusion of what freedom is and not actually necessarily the reality of what freedom is. Like freedom on your kind of on your track. The illusion of freedom is that you just like, oh, it's the 4 hour work week. I can work from wherever I
yeah,
want. I do all these things. I make all this money, all this stuff. The reality of freedom is often very different because what it means is that no one's telling you what to do at any point in time, which means you have zero structure.
yeah.
It means that you have to create that yourself. It means that you are the one at the end of the day that the finger points at on everything. You have to go, you eat what you kill on every single thing. So you are accountable on an extreme level to everything. There's no excuses at the end of
Yeah.
the day. And that is actually quite challenging. And there's drawbacks to that in a lot of cases. It would be nice to be able to like, hey, rely on someone else for something at some point in time. But that is kind of part of this gap between the reality versus the illusion. That I think it would be better if there were people that were a little bit more honest about that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because especially here on social media, you hear only one side. And then you said sometimes that everyone struggles with something, but we don't see what they
Yeah.
struggle with. So we're sharing one thing, but then in the back, there's always something that we struggle. I struggle with something. You're struggling with something,
Oh
perhaps.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just full transparency. Like, I mean, I think I think one of the biggest challenges that I face is um, just in general, like a decision fatigue around needing to make constantly like high intensity, bigger decisions on an ongoing
Mm,
basis where I am like the uh, ultimate stakeholder in all of them. And when you build a business around yourself, that's just the reality.
yeah.
Is like I can't outsource a lot of these
Yeah.
decisions because it's me. It's my face, my time, my
Yeah.
um my word. And um I've had a lot of conversations with like with Ali Abdal is a close friend of mine, and he and I have had a lot of conversations about this over the years because for a while he was going down this rabbit hole of trying to um, avoid it becoming like key man risk, like basically try to separate his brand from the businesses he was building's brands. And it's very challenging to do because at the end of the day, people are coming to these things because of his face, and you try to separate the two, it sort of gets confusing and it's not clear and it
Yeah.
doesn't do as well. Um, but it is a real challenge of this sort of new world ecosystem and economy that we live in.
Yeah. And actually, I remember one thing that you shared in one of these book session, which was I bought the book in pre-sale because I trusted you. And the people who are here, which by the way, let's see, we have uh, a lot of people connected, and they are here because of you, because they trust you, they follow you, and uh, if you want ideas, of course there are a lot of ideas and all over the place, but it's your specific take on the idea, your angle, your experience, all the things that people value. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that in a world of AI and the rise of like people using AI for
Yeah.
content and comments, Um, it's kind of like the realness and authenticity that I think survives and
Hmm.
and allows you to win over the long term.
Yeah.
Like I don't really have any interest in having AI start creating all my stuff for me. Partially because I enjoy writing. I mean, writing is how I think. It's how I articulate ideas. It's how I do all of these things. But also, I want to be a real human and actually spend time with people and be able to be real about um, struggles, challenges, things I'm wrestling with. Um, and I think that that's more valuable because
Yeah.
the people that are reading it are real humans. And so if you could create a bunch of AI content that a bunch of AIs would really like,
Yeah.
maybe. But at the end of the day, I do think that like authenticity and trust are what allow you to achieve power law outcomes in any of these
Yeah,
areas.
absolutely. I see we have a lot of questions. I have one question that popped into my mind, and then I propose we go back to the chat. What when you said that talking to real people reminded me of the thousands of hours that you said and you did with all the conversation you had with a lot of people in these years. And I'm super curious, what made you think of having all this conversation? What was the value?
I mean, I think that to understand something human, you have to immerse yourself in human experience. And if there's one thing I think that allows me to stand out. It's that I really love people and spending time with people and different types of people. And I would say like if there's one that has sort of allowed me to create a very unique network of people who have supported me and who I consider friends and mentors over the years that have lifted me up on their shoulders in many cases. And um, and that is a very unique asset or attribute for someone that's my age. And so I think
Yeah.
leaning into that in the things that I do and the things that I create is really useful. I mean, I can share and like bring the insights of some of these people to everybody in a connected and sort of thoughtful and integrated way. Um, and I need to think about more and more ways to do that. But the book was a good starting point.
Yeah, and absolutely. And then you have the world beside behind you, which is curiosity, which connects beautifully, because you never know what you're going to find in another person. There's always something to discover, always something beautiful, always.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Let's check the chat. What we have here. Uh, mm, 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 mm. Yeah, we have a question from Fabian. He's asking about anti goals, and he asked, "What are your top anti goals in your path as a content creator? What do you want to avoid?"
Um, I would say the number one thing is just ever creating a whole bunch of content that like any um 22-year-old with access to ChatGPT and a computer could create. I really want to share things that I feel like are unique to my lens or perspective on the world that I've spent time on and thought about and wrestled with in my own ways. Um, that mainly goes to like when I'm sort of writing things that are deeper and in longer form. You can't always do that with Twitter. It's just so short and punchy. But I don't. I mean, like my LinkedIn, like I don't. There's never been any like scalable automation to the things that I'm doing, and the reason is because I really like actually being the one with the pen creating these things and sharing it. And I think that's the slower path, but I think it's the more durable long term path.
Mm.
And I'm willing to make that trade off in the way that I think about the future and the way that I think about the world. I've never done the like, oh, I have a chief of staff writing my things for me, posting it with AI and content and ghostwriters. Like I don't I don't want to do that. Could I grow faster doing that? Probably, but it's not the game that I want to play. I want to be in touch with it. I actually want to sit down and do it. So when you see me post something, I sat there and wrote it that morning. I actually don't even have a schedule. I have no idea what's getting posted tomorrow. Like I sit down and I do it in the morning. Um,
Wow.
and again, like I think that there are things like this that are sort of the unscalable things. And my general belief is that these unscalable things become the most scalable over long periods of time.
Mm. I love what you say about unscalable things, because there was a friend of mine, which is PJ Milani, that perhaps you also know. He's an amazing
I
illustration.
do, yeah.
He talked about the things that don't scale, and you did a few of those. And there's one which was amazing, which was where you recorded all these messages to all the people who send you an email. Can you talk a little bit about the value of that? Because it doesn't scale, of course.
Yeah, I mean those unscalable things become the most scalable. I think that like the people that sent me receipts that I sent videos to, I mean I made probably over 1,000 videos by the end of
Wow.
everything. Unbelievable amount of time to go and do that. But those people are I think a high proportion of them are real evangelists for the ideas and for the things that I'm talking about. And so when you think about the ripple effect impact of that, they're going out and living by these things. They're taking them more seriously. They're more likely to share it. So you did one action that became a significantly more impactful action than it otherwise would have been.
Wow. There's another question here just now from Lorenzo. Was there a moment in your life when you realized you were rich in one type of wealth but bankrupt in another? Mm.
Yeah, I mean it's the very beginning of my book.
Yeah.
It's the prologue of my book is that story. I mean I think I lay it out in quite a bit of depth there, so I don't want to spoiler alert the whole thing. I would read that, but I was making money. I was and that was good in a lot of ways in terms of creating some level of financial independence, but very bad in the impact that it was having on other areas of my life. And to be clear, that was my own fault. It wasn't like someone was forcing me down that path or doing anything. It was my own narrow priorities that were growing increasingly narrow year by year and blinding me to everything else.
Mm. And there's one thing that reminds me when you said this was my own, which is the agency that we have. And you talk sometimes about the victim mentality or the opportunity mindset. What's the connection with that?
Yeah, I think that agency is sort of at the core of all self improvement, growth related ideas that anyone can share. Um, I mean, agency is the belief that you are at the steering wheel, that you are in control, you can take an action and create an outcome. And that is really, anything that you talk about within the world of growth has to rely on that feeling of agency, and ultimately feeling stuck, feeling lost in life is when you no longer feel you have that agency, when you feel like you are incapable of taking an action and creating an outcome,
Mm,
which is why I turn to physical wealth, why I turn to health as such an important part of your life, because that is the fastest place where you can reassume agency, where you can take
mm,
actions, see the direct outcome of those actions, and then see the ripple effect that that agency has into other areas of your life.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we have one more question from Laura. Yeah, it's actually connected to this. What's one belief or habit you had to unlearn in order to stop living on autopilot?
I would say probably the biggest one was just like measuring my own self worth on the basis of how much money I was making.
Mm,
Um, I was just living in a world and surrounded, like spending time with the circles I was in, the people, where everything was about how much money you make, your bonus, where you vacation, the fancy bottle of wine, the bourbon, like all of those things. It was all, sort of status and signaling and insecurity playing out around, these feelings of self worth attached to financial success. And that's a hard thing to crack. And you need an alternative. You need something else you can start measuring and thinking about in order to sort of opt out of that system, which is really what this book is. It's a manifestation of that idea that you can opt out and you can create your own scoreboard. Um, I have been, generally speaking, blown away by how insecure highly successful people are. I've spent time with a lot of incredible people over the years, and it's shocking to me just how insecure some hyper successful people are. The need to flex on things, status signal, knock other people down.
mm,
It's just always pretty shocking to me. And it all stems from this. You are just you're attaching so much of your self worth to a single thing. Where, as I write in the book, there's always going to be a bigger boat,
yeah,
and you're chasing. You're chasing the more that you've been told to chase rather than the one that you've designed yourself.
yeah. There's one thing that I love also from this part of the book that you said that we all want the same thing, and it doesn't have to do with money.
Yeah, I just think people lose sight of that at the end of the day. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like I think I fundamentally believe that that is true, and then what happens is that um, you focus on the short term and the near term thing that gets you the pats on the back, and you lose sight of what that bigger picture thing is, and it's very hard to sort of re-find it along that journey.
yeah, absolutely. Being totally honest, Sahil, there is also for transparency. I feel I'm very privileged. And maybe to some people also connected will they say, okay, it's easy to say to you, Roberto, or Sahil, we are living in a very lucky position. So, but at the same time, there is something that you say also in the book that everyone on all position, everywhere in the spectrum, they all said they need 3 to 5 more times more money to be okay. So it's again, it's ourselves that will tell us that we have to always have more.
Yeah, I mean the thing around privilege, I completely agree. There is blind luck involved in all of this, where you are born, who you're born to, the circumstances, all of those baseline situations. Um, The whole point of this entire idea is that you no longer need to feel like a comparison game to anyone else. You can define
Exactly.
what your own success looks like and take actions from wherever you are, whatever your starting point is,
Exactly.
to build towards
Yeah.
this. If you are at a low rung, if you have not come up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you will, in terms of your financial wealth, the single best action you can take to improve your life is going to be to build financial wealth to come up that curve.
Yeah.
A lot of these other areas of life are, basically inconsequential until you have done that. You like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is real and it is lasting and has the Lindy effect for a reason
Yeah.
because the ability to provide food, shelter, basic needs, even basic pleasures, want a vacation a year. Some of these early on in life gains, money directly buys happiness, and so in those early days, and so having a focus on that is really important. Um, but you get to run your own race, and whatever your baseline is, wherever you are starting out, you start from there and you can build. None of this is to say that money doesn't matter. It just is to say that money can't be the only thing that you are focusing on that journey.
Yeah. And there is a beautiful question also from Matthew that I just see, which is connected to this. What's your definition of enough?
Yeah, I mean, I am already living that in many
Mm,
ways, I would say. I mean, I have said this before that
mhm.
like my definition of wealth is being able to take my son in the pool at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. Um,
Yeah.
that basically captures uh, what I want out of my own life is the ability to do those things, and I can do that. That doesn't mean that I always have full clarity around that being what matters. That doesn't mean that I stop pursuing more. It just means that the more is grounded in something more meaningful than just money. I'm not going and just chasing a whole bunch of financial gains. If I am chasing money, it's because I'm trying to create more stability or long-term durability, or it's because I'm chasing purpose and something that's really meaningful to me, creating a lot of energy for me in the long run, sharing ideas with people in a meaningful way, what have you.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a different plane. Now we talk about your child, and I love how you share stories with your son Roman. And I have a question for you, which is, in which way being a father changed you?
Oh, I mean, basically in every way imaginable. I would just say, at a high level, like the level of clarity and focus that I have around the things that matter
Mm,
has dramatically increased. Like, I don't think you can say no to things effectively until you know what you're saying yes to.
mm,
And my son and my wife have provided the most clear yes that I could imagine having, and so it's much easier for me now to say no to doing things because I know that it's pulling me away from time with him or from creating memories or from having sort of those lasting experiences that I'm never going to get back. Um, that has probably been the number one thing. It's an incredible focus and clarity enhancer.
yeah. So it looks like you want to make the most of what you have. So it has to be the most important thing. You cannot squander your time or your attention into things that don't matter in the end. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Which brings me to one question also who a person shared with me, which is that, of course, not going to do a lot of spoiler, but there is a beautiful thing here in the book, which is the right now test and the opportunity test. Can you tell a little bit more about this framework and how it works?
Yeah, the right now test is just asking yourself, would I do this right now? Like if someone asks you to do something in the future, just asking yourself, would I do this thing right now? So if you could invite me to a dinner 2 months from now, asking myself, would I go to this dinner if it were tonight or if it were tomorrow night? And if the answer is no, you're not going to want to do it in the future. So say no. And if the answer is yes, then you say yes to it because you will want to do it.
Mm,
It's a really useful tool because it stops you from having this like weird time bias thing where we always assume we're going to have more time in the future than we have right now, um, and we never do. And so, making sure that you actually take that into account as you're making decisions is really useful. I am pretty good about this. I would say like 80% of the time, but I often say yes to doing
mhm.
things that then the date comes and I have that like yes damn
Yeah.
effect of saying damn when the event actually comes. So I need to continue getting better about this. The challenge is that if you define as sort of a nice person in some way, it's very difficult to say no. And sort of just like leave people hanging in some way. Um, but as you achieve more and more, success in whatever domain you're in, the demands and the requests on your time and energy are effectively infinite. I mean,
Yeah.
I like the number of messages that I get now on a daily basis, emails, messages, requests, that are all effectively requests for my time.
Uh,
Um, I mean, it's probably 50 messages a day. I would have to ask my team, but it's like basically nonstop.
yeah.
And so, if there wasn't a clear way to just be saying no to things on an ongoing basis, it would be impossible. I would not have any time to do anything that actually mattered. I would just be on coffee chats with people, getting my brain picked or whatever that means.
Yeah, absolutely. And this reminds me again, one more thing about the time. You talk about the tension between being with your family, enjoying that moment, and developing your full potential, having the most possible impact. I see also connection here to what you're saying.
Um, yeah, I mean, you're trying to effectively create a dynamic tension between presence and ambition,
Mm,
um, between the desire to be present with your family during these, very precious years,
yeah.
the knowledge that time is your most precious asset, that you're not going to get these years back in whatever way, with those years also being the ones where you're supposed to be chasing your grand ambitions, where you're seeing the compound. I mean, like your 30s are really the first time in your life when you're starting to see the compounding of the things that you did in your 20s. Your 20s,
Mm,
you're kind of stumbling around a whole lot, haven't figured anything out. In your 30s, you start to see little green shoots of compounding of some of those actions. And then in your 40s, it's really ramping. And so those are typically the times when you have young kids. You don't want to step off the compounding
yeah.
engine. You want to allow it to keep going, but at the same time, you also want to be there. And so, like that dynamic tension, and figuring out how to navigate that is a real struggle. I would say personally, I wrestle with it with this idea of missions, that my family is a part of the like much broader mission that we are on, in to create a life together. And so for me to be able to include my wife and son on this
Mm,
mission, for them to understand why I'm doing the things I'm doing, for my son to understand why I'm traveling when I go to do things, that is really important.
yeah, yeah. And again, it reminds me one other thing that you always say. There is this viral uh, thing, which I, by the way, also did an illustration of that, which is the people who will remember working late in 20 years will be your kids.
Yeah.
But then you give always two sides of this. It's not only the classic one, which is, okay, don't do that. There is another view, which is sharing the why are you doing that?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, it's exactly what I said, which is just making sure that they are included in that
Yeah,
why. I think for your kids to see you work hard on things that you care about, for them to understand that it is important to work hard on things that create energy in your life, is a very important lesson that they will remember forever. We don't teach our kids anything. They embrace and embody things that they see us living by.
exactly.
And so for my son or for whoever to see me living by these things is, fundamentally the way that he is going to learn any of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also say that when you are with your kid, you are with your kid. So even if you work late, if sometimes you have to do something, then when you are with your kid, with your family, you're 100% present. You don't have the mobile, you don't have any distraction. So you're with them. So maybe it's not about only how much time you spend, but if you are really present when you are with them, because it don't matter if you are all the weekend, but then you are looking at the mobile phone all the time. What's that? What are they learning? They're learning you have distracted father, and it's much better. And I 100% agree to say, okay, this weekend I'm going to do this because I really care about that, and then we'll spend the whole afternoon together, 100% with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Let's see if you have more question. I see Hey, hello, Kate. Great to see you here. Kate asks, how do we get people value time more than money? Today is not the case yet.
How do you? And sorry, I didn't hear you for a second there. What
Yes.
was the beginning of it?
How do you get the people to value time more than money? Because today it's not the case. They value more money than time.
I think that there's just a mindset shift around this that people need to understand and embrace. The question that I ask in the book is whether you would trade lives with Warren Buffett.
Ah,
It's like that idea of, he's worth $130 billion. I'm actually, right after this, I'm flying to Omaha for, he has his annual weekend event this weekend in Omaha that I go to every year with a few friends. He's worth $130 billion. He has access to anyone in the world. He flies around on a private jet, all of these great things. But no one would trade lives with him that's on this call because he's 95 years old. You wouldn't agree to trade all of that time for $130 billion. And so you sort of know right there that your time has incalculable value.
yeah.
But then on a daily basis, we're spitting on that time. We're like disregarding it. We're, scrolling on our phone, doing all these silly things, comparing our lives to other people, stressing about the past, anxiety about the future, disregarding this one most precious asset. And so what the call to action there is to say, okay, I know this. I just heard this question. It sparked this intrigue. I need to pull that awareness on an ongoing basis, because what happens with awareness is kind of perishable. You
Mm,
have like, oh, awareness comes in, it's interesting, it's sitting there, it's great. I'm acting on it right now. Then 3 days go by and the same action happens, and I'm like, oh, that awareness is gone, and so I do something stupid. We need to pull that awareness on a more regular basis, because when we can pull from it, again, it's like it may be perishable, but if I can pull it regularly, I can act accordingly.
yeah, there's a beautiful quote in the book that you pull out, which is how you spend your days is how you spend your life.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we have to see what did we do today? How did we spend an hour? That 30 minutes, 5 minutes here and there. Yeah. And there's one more question. This is also a very uh, connected question. Where do you want to be in 10 years? Well, concerning your professional path from Fabian.
I have no idea. If I was
Yeah,
good at planning 10 years in advance, I wouldn't have had all the struggle that I had,
yeah, exactly.
5 years ago. I think it's impossible to plan the future that far in advance. The reality is that the most interesting opportunities in life are inherently invisible to you. They are nonlinear, they are asymmetric. And so if you attempt to plan them, um, you're sort of just like fighting an uphill battle. It's impossible because they're invisible. The path that is the best one for you will reveal itself as you take action along the way, and you have to be ready to then go march down it whenever it may come. But trying to create that plan is sort of a fool's errand. Like 5 years ago, if you had asked me to write down 100 scenarios for my life where I'd be in 5 years, I would have written down 100 scenarios. Not a single one of
Yeah,
them would have been where I am now, because I hadn't ever written anything. I hadn't written on the internet. I didn't have a Twitter account. Like none of the stuff that I'm
no,
doing now. And that was 5 years ago.
yeah,
And so, planning 10 years, I'm like, I really have no idea. I hope I can list out a bunch of hopes of things that I'm doing on a bigger picture scale, of the impact that I'm creating, of the things that I'm sharing. Um, but we always live in pretty uncertain times. And I think now more than ever.
yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely. And there's,
And I apologize. I have to leave in just a couple minutes. My
of
wife and
course,
son just got home, so my yes is back. So I need to make sure that I'm taking
absolutely.
care of
And
it.
this is an example of what you were sharing a few
Yeah,
minutes ago, being
yeah.
fully present now and fully present with your family. So to to close, I have one question, my last question, and of course we don't have the time to answer all of the questions, but I see that many of these will be answered in the book. So I definitely recommend to all the people who's listening to get the book. It's amazing. So many insights, so many useful questions. And my last question for you would be, Sahil, what do you want to see more and less in the world?
More. I mean, I less. I would just love to see people focusing much less on others, like worrying about what everyone else is doing, and much more on taking action in their own life. Like the amount of time that people spend, energy people spend comparing themselves to other people, um, would be much better spent investing in your own life,
Yeah.
and creating for those around you. Um, and more, I would love to see people question some of these assumptions that they've had about what they're capable of doing, about what the path is. And I think a lot of good comes from that. It's not always going to be that you decide to step off and go do something crazy.
Yeah.
But I've never seen anything bad come from questioning some of the defaults.
Yeah. Absolutely. And thank you, Sahil, for this time. Thank you to the people, all of these amazing friends and people here, connection. Thank you for your question, and thank you for the invitation to do this. So we'll keep following you. It was amazing, and I hope it was a good investment of this precious time that we have. So
Thank you.
thank you so much. Bye, everyone.